The elite private school sparkled with wealth and reputation. Children of the city's most powerful families filled its classrooms, their futures already paved in gold. Among them was Elena, the daughter of a billionaire CEO whose influence reached every corner of business and politics. She was admired, envied, and untouchable. But one afternoon, during a school charity event, everything changed. As students mingled and teachers supervised, Elena suddenly collapsed to the floor. Gasps echoed across the hall, and panic broke out as her small body convulsed. Staff rushed to her side, the school nurse sprinting in with emergency supplies. Within minutes, Elena was placed in the infirmary with an IV drip to stabilize her. Whispers spread quickly through the halls. The CEO's daughter ill. How could this happen? Students watched with wide eyes, while teachers exchanged nervous glances. No one dared speculate too loudly, for fear of the consequences. After all, the entire school's fate rested on the goodwill of Elena's powerful father. But as the drip of the dir-4 continued, Elena's condition only worsened. Her skin paled, her breathing grew shallow, and the room filled with an air of dread. The nurse reassured everyone it was just a reaction, but even she looked unsure. Outside the infirmary door, a maid stood silently. She wasn't supposed to be there. Maids in this school were invisible, tasked only with cleaning and serving, but her sharp eyes never missed details. And when she looked closely at the forebag, her heart dropped. Something wasn't right. She had seen this before, and in that moment, she knew Elena wasn't just sick, someone was trying to kill her. The maid's name was Rosa, a quiet woman who had worked at the school for years. Nobody noticed her presence. Nobody asked her opinion, and nobody expected her to interfere. But Rosa had grown up in poverty, where survival meant paying attention to the smallest details. She had cleaned hospitals and cared for sick relatives. She knew the difference between medicine and poison. Her hands trembled as she stepped forward. Her voice cutting through the tense silence, she cried out, accusing the four of being tainted. The words shocked the room. Teachers stared, offended by her audacity. The nurse protested angrily, insisting everything was sterile. But Rosa's gaze remained fixed on the bag, her instincts screaming that Elena was moments away from death. The CEO's daughter writhed on the bed, each second ticking louder than the last, and then Rosa did what no one expected. She yanked the foreline from Elena's arm. Gasps erupted. Staff rushed to restrain her. But within moments of the fore's removal, Elena's breathing began to stabilize. The color slowly returned to her cheeks. The room fell into stunned silence. The nurse stammered, unable to explain why the girl was improving without the drip. Eyes turned to Rosa. A maid who should have been invisible had just saved the CEO's daughter's life, but Rosa wasn't celebrating. She knew the truth. This wasn't an accident. Someone inside these walls had deliberately placed poison into that four, and if she had stayed silent, Elena would have died before anyone realized it. Now Rosa wasn't just a maid, she was a witness. And the danger wasn't over. News of the maid's intervention spread through the school like wildfire. By evening, the CEO himself stormed onto campus, his face etched with fury and fear. Elena was carried away under heavy security, her recovery still fragile. Parents demanded answers, teachers whispered nervously. But behind closed doors, powerful enemies began to stir. For Rosa, life had instantly changed. The woman who had once been ignored was now the center of unwanted attention. Some praised her courage, others whispered that she had overstepped, that perhaps she was involved in the plot herself. Suspicion twisted in every corner. The CEO's advisors launched a quiet investigation. Security cameras were pulled, medical supplies checked, and staff interrogated. Yet nothing pointed clearly to the culprit. All evidence of tampering had been carefully concealed. Whoever had done this was clever and close. Meanwhile, Rosa couldn't shake the memory of the nurse's reaction. The hesitation, the defensiveness, the anger when challenged. Was it guilt, or just pride, wounded by a maid's accusation? At night, Rosa returned to her tiny quarters, fear weighing heavy on her chest. She had crossed an invisible line. In the world of the powerful, truth was dangerous. And if she was right, the one who poisoned Elena would not hesitate to silence her next. But Rosa wasn't driven by fear alone. She was driven by justice. She had once lost someone dear to poison, a relative whose death had been dismissed as natural. She recognized the signs because she had lived them. Now, standing against wealth and corruption, Rosa prepared herself. She would not let Elena's life hang in the balance again. Days passed and tension thickened within the school. Elena, now stable but weak, remained under strict care. Her father quietly ordered private investigators to shadow every staff member. But Rosa knew the truth wouldn't be uncovered by paperwork alone. It required courage, so she began to watch. She cleaned hallways and classrooms, blending into the background while her eyes studied everything. She noticed small details: who lingered near the infirmary, who flinched when her name was mentioned, who avoided the CEO's gaze. Slowly a pattern emerged. It wasn't the nurse. She had been careless but not malicious. The real danger lay higher. Rosa's suspicions fell on a teacher who had long resented the CEO's influence on the school. A man whose debts were whispered about in hushed tones. a man who had access to medical supplies because of his position in the science department. One night Rosa set her trap. She stayed late, pretending to mop floors, leaving an unsealed fork back near the infirmary. From the shadows, she watched as the teacher approached, glancing over his shoulder. His hand reached into his pocket, slipping a vial into the fluid. Rosa's heart pounded. Proof. She revealed herself and his face drained of color. But before he could silence her, security stormed in. Rosa had tipped them off earlier, ensuring she wasn't alone. The trap had worked. The man was dragged away, screaming excuses, but the evidence was undeniable. He had been bribed by the CEO's rivals to ensure Alina never left the school alive for the first time. The truth was no longer hidden. The next day the CEO stood before Rosa, no longer towering with power, but humbled. He had always dismissed the staff as background figures, mere shadows in his empire. Yet it was Rosa, the maid, who had saved his daughter, not the teachers, not the doctors, not the guards. He listened quietly as she explained how she had noticed the signs, how she had risked her own safety to speak up, how she had trapped the true culprit. For a man used to control, it was a bitter truth. All his wealth, influence, and resources had failed. Only Rosa's courage had protected Alina. Parents at the school demanded sweeping reforms. Staff members were scrutinized, security tightened, and the CEO pledged to never again overlook the voices of those deemed beneath notice. But for Rosa, it wasn't about recognition. She wanted safety for Alina and justice for those who plotted against her. The teacher confessed under pressure, revealing a network of rivals determined to weaken the CEO by striking at his family. The betrayal was deeper than anyone expected, yet the plan had failed because one maid refused to stay silent. In the CEO's heart, gratitude replaced pride. He saw Rosa not as a maid, but as a savior of his daughter. But this was not just a personal victory. It was the beginning of a change no one had anticipated. Weeks later, Alina returned to school, her strength renewed. The halls at once echoed, with whispers of her near death now filled with awe at the maid who saved her life. For the first time, students and staff alike greeted Rosa with respect. The CEO honored her publicly, ensuring the world knew what she had done. He offered her more than just money. He gave her a new position, overseeing the safety of his daughter and the school. She was no longer invisible. But Rosa didn't stop there. She used her new influence to protect others, to ensure that every child in the school, rich or poor, was safe. She became a guardian, a symbol that justice can come from the most unexpected places. Alina, forever grateful, clung to Rosa like family. The bond they formed was unbreakable. And the CEO, once hardened by wealth, learned that true power wasn't in money or status, it was in listening, in valuing every voice, even though society ignores. The poison meant to kill had failed. Instead, it revealed the strength of a woman long overlooked. And Rosa, once a maid in the shadows, now stood in the light, proof that courage knows no rank and justice always finds a way.